Now available in paperback and e-readers. Spellbound, a darker shade of black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller. A migrant was arrested and charged with participating in the rape of a 13-year-old girl last week in Queens.
Talk about a neighborhood watch. Tonight, we are hearing from the people who spotted an accused rapist in a bodega and said they delivered a beatdown before turning him over to the cops. Police say he attacked two 13-year-olds, raping one of them last week in Kisseina Park, Queens, less than 3 miles from where he was arrested. Let's get right out to CBS 2 investigative reporter Tim McNicholas, live at Queens Criminal Court, where the suspect will face a judge. Tim.
Maurice, a group of people in Corona tell me they saw a picture of the suspect on social media, and immediately they realized they'd already seen him around the neighborhood. So they were on the lookout, and sure enough, they saw him again, or on one this morning.
This video shows Christian Giovanni Ingalandi on the ground just outside this deli, minutes after Jeffrey Flores says he spotted him.
I come and I just grab him out the store.
Flores and others in the neighborhood say they'd seen him at the store earlier and waited for hours to see if he'd return.
And after that, I ain't gonna lie, everybody knew what's up and everybody just started beating on him.
The group says they used this belt to tie up his legs, seen here after the arrest.
He fought with them, and the community still managed to hold on to him until we got there.
The NYPD says Ingalandi was treated and released from the hospital for minor injuries.
We waited 7 hours, you heard, all day, all night for him.
This man, who goes by Forge and didn't want to give his real name, says Ingalandi likely would have gotten away if not for him and about 6 other people who helped detain him.
You know what we do? On this side over here, we don't condone none of that. You know, he's a rapist.
Angela Cerati says she's the one in this video asking Ingalandi in Spanish where he was going. She says she also called 911.
Because he kept trying to run. You understand? He kept trying to run from all of us. So I was like, where are you going?
Yeah, he kept saying help, help, help. And then I told him to shut up. That's what the girls was yelling. One less guy in the street, messing up the world.
And the NYPD thanking and praising that group today. As for that suspect, he now faces charges of rape, sex abuse, robbery, and other crimes. He is set to face a judge here in Queens Criminal Court either tonight or more likely at this point tomorrow morning, Maurice.
And Tim, emotions were clearly running high as this group grabbed this guy. Did they describe what it was like, what they were feeling in those moments?
Well, I actually asked Flores about that, and he said one reason he was so mad and one reason he wanted to be on the lookout is because he has 2 little sisters of his own, and he soon will have a daughter. He said when he saw this man, when he realized it was the suspect, he said walking away was not an option, Maurice.
Yeah, I think we can all understand that. Tim McNicholas tonight in Queens, thank you. And we are staying on top of this story. We will bring you the details from the suspect's court appearance and any new developments throughout the evening on air and online at cbsnewyork.com.
Now, in this alleged incident that took place in Kisseina Park, Queens, a 13-year-old boy and a 13-year-old girl got out of school. And as they got out of school, they went to the park in Kisseina Park, Queens, to go play some soccer. And as they were on their way to the field to go play these games, they ran into a 25-year-old migrant, Christian Giovanni Ingalandi. And as they were confronted by Christian Giovanni Ingalandi, he brandished a machete-style knife and told the 2 teens to follow him into the park. And as he led them allegedly into a secluded area of the park after threatening them with a large machete-style knife, he took them to this secluded area of the park, tied their wrists together with shoelaces, and as the 13-year-old boy the girl was traveling to the park with was raped, the 13-year-old boy was forced to watch, and after participating in the sexual violation of this 13-year-old girl, the 25-year-old man then stole their cell phones and told them to wait 20 minutes until he could flee the scene. And after he allegedly wound up fleeing the scene, the 13-year-old boy and 13-year-old girl returned to school, where they reported the sex crime to police. And after they reported the sex crime to police, they gave a description of the perpetrator to the community. And after hearing about this heinous crime, the entire community of Kisseina Park, Queens, was extremely outraged. And as they were outraged, not only were the police looking for the suspect, who had a distinctive tattoo on his chest, the entire community was looking for this suspect. And at about 1 o'clock in the morning, they quickly found Christian Giovanni Ignalandi going to a bodega as part of his routine. And as they found him, they found that he had the same description as the suspect and quickly confronted him on the street. And as the people of Kisseina, Queens, participated in street justice, they gave him a beatdown and then detained him for police after they identified the distinctive animal tattoo that was on his chest. And after quickly identifying him in connection with this extremely heinous sex crime, they quickly then treated him at the hospital for minor injuries, and he was quickly transferred to the 112th precinct, where he was arrested and charged with a series of sex crimes and other crimes such as kidnapping and endangerment. Now, the NYPD see this alleged sexual violation of this 13-year-old girl by this migrant as a connection with this alleged sex crime as an isolated incident. But when I take a critical examination of the alleged behavior that Christian Giovanni Ignalandi participated in, it definitely fits the pattern and profile for beta males that I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis. And it's clear to me that Christian Giovanni Ignalandi is a sad, tragic example of what happens when our border and immigration system completely fail, because it's clear to me that he should have never been allowed to enter the country. Unfortunately, due to the poor border policy, he was allowed to come into this country and was able to participate in the sex crime that traumatized this 13-year-old girl and 13-year-old boy. And this migrant basically was allowed to come into the country because we here in America and New York basically are still caught up in these games as related to our border, instead of setting a boundary to protect the health and safety of people in the United States. And we really do need that boundary controlled by immigration's customs and enforcement, because ICE can vet individuals and make sure that these individuals are coming into the country for legitimate reasons and not be able to slip through the cracks the way Christian Giovanni Ignalandi was able to slip through the cracks. And as he slipped through the cracks, he didn't really come for the better life that many blue politicians like Eric Adams want to say that he was coming here for. No, what Christian Giovanni Ignalandi basically came here for was to, again, basically not really try to accomplish anything, because in the 3 years that he has been in this country, he has done basically nothing but sit in shelters. And as he sat in shelters, he has been basically like beta males, simmering and boiling in anger about feeling frustrated about not being able to make progress as related to the American dream that was sold on television shows like Friends, Seinfeld, and Sex and the City that many people watched in foreign countries. He felt frustrated that he could not be able to achieve that success in time, and felt powerless about not being able to make any progress in his life in the time that he was in this country. And those feelings of frustration are the thing that led to him basically seething and boiling in anger to the point where he wanted to participate in criminal behavior and was possibly the motive for him looking to participate in this sex crime, where he looked to allegedly violate a child and take away a child's innocence, and take away this child's innocence, all because he was basically frustrated about possibly the state of his own life and state and direction of his life, a direction he should not have been allowed to go on had we had proper border laws and had politicians interested in protecting our border and protecting the safety of our youngest children. That's what we really is again the great tragedy as related to this crime. This 13-year-old girl wound up losing her innocence and losing her possible virginity as related to this crime. This man basically took away something from her that can never be given back, all because he basically wanted to hurt someone. And again, I say hurt someone because this is an act of violence, and an act of violence against a child, an act of violence against a child, all because this man basically was just twisted and depraved to the point where he had no indifference to this child's life, and again didn't care about this child at all, because after he raped this child and made this teenage boy watch him do this heinous act, he went back on with his life like absolutely nothing mattered as related to her life, going back on his routine to going to that bodega, going on that routine to go get whatever food that he got from the bodega as he went back to the shelter that he lived in, acting like this little girl's life didn't matter in the scheme of things. That's what's really so twisted about this whole entire story that absolutely disgusts me. And he just, again, as I see it, is a monster, and a monster who should have never been allowed in this country. And I really not only look at this guy as a criminal, but I also blame politicians, whether it be Greg Abbott, who basically played this game with the border by busing this individual up here, or Eric Adams, who was looking to virtue, and Kathy Hochul, who are looking to virtue signal as related to trying to spite Donald Trump in maintaining the just dysfunctional policy of sanctuary cities. That whole dysfunctional policy of sanctuary cities basically destroyed the life of this 13-year-old girl. And while these politicians sit and bicker and argue, sadly, this 13-year-old girl is becoming a victim of a sex crime, similar to the way women in countries like Sweden, the UK, and many other countries have been victims of sex crimes, all because these countries' politicians want to maintain a policy as related to trying to protect people who entered the country illegally, allowing them to break one boundary as related to law, and that leads to them further escalating their crimes to winding up breaking more laws. And as they wind up breaking more laws, they wind up participating in more heinous crimes because they see that there's nobody there to establish a hard boundary for these individuals. And that's where our government has failed, and that's why we saw people taking to the streets to participate in street justice, taking to the streets to participate in street justice, because our legal system has basically failed, giving migrants like this a right to stay in this country and giving them a right to stay in the country without ever being vetted or ever being held accountable for a crime. And again, it's a crime that this 13-year-old girl had to become a victim of this man, who according to some reports had been arrested before, and thanks to policies established by the previous mayor, Bill de Blasio, we couldn't get ICE to come in and be able to deal with this individual. No, ICE couldn't come in and deal with this individual the way that they were supposed to, because if this man had been dealt with by ICE, he wouldn't have been able to come to New York and enter the city illegally and be in the city's shelter system for so long. And again, he's in the shelter system after being arrested, and again, this man should have been deported a long time ago, but he was allowed to roam the streets looking to prey on children, because that's the most despicable thing of this. This man basically preyed on children and acted with depraved indifference regarding the lives of those children, basically looking to gratify his need for power by participating in this deviant sexual act, that will possibly traumatize not only that girl who was violated and had her body touched by this man in the most egregious fashion, but also this boy who will see at this whole act, and again, in just one of the most disturbing acts in front of him, and this will be burned into his memory for life. I mean, this whole incident just shows just how our society has failed our children, and how these politicians here in New York, in their quest to virtue signal and try to spite Donald Trump, destroyed the life of a child in my eyes, because this whole case basically shows how our whole immigration policy here in New York is a failure, and how Sanctuary City has turned into an insane asylum, because when you have a man who participates in a sex crime, basically having to get street justice, it clearly shows the failure of the Sanctuary City policy on New York City, because instead of providing sanctuary for people who were in need, we have turned into an insane asylum where the inmates run the asylum, and this is all under the watch of New York Mayor Eric Adams and New York Governor Kathy Hochul, that we have this whole dysfunctional system. And under this dysfunctional system, a guy like Christian Giovanni Ignolondi can basically be allowed to be here in New York City and prey on children. That just shows the complete failure of these whole Sanctuary City laws. But the new people like Eric Adams and the City Council want to sit there and say, oh, we need these policies, but it's clear that these unconstitutional policies are a failure, and all it takes is one politician to call it out and basically say that, okay, this whole policy of Sanctuary City violates the supremacy clause of the Constitution and the law established by Bill de Blasio that makes it where ICE cannot work with city government violates the supremacy clause. We need to repeal the Sanctuary City laws, because they are putting people like these two 13-year-olds in jeopardy, putting them in jeopardy and putting their safety at risk by putting these predators out here to prey on them. I mean, this guy basically should have never been allowed to enter the country, and had we had a proper vetting system, this guy possibly never would have been able to come into this country to violate this girl and traumatize her for the rest of her life. I mean, that's where I see the deep failure from the men in government who basically let this man in crisis into the country. And it's not just blue or red. They all failed this 13-year-old girl. They all failed her because they were caught up in their ideals instead of seeing the real people who were impacted by these just dysfunctional and failed policies of sanctuary cities on the left, and on the right, this whole dysfunctional policy of not really supervising our border. We have completely failed this 13-year-old girl and this 13-year-old boy, not providing them the protection that they needed, because a 13-year-old girl should never have to deal with this kind of predator in her life when we care about her. And it's really sad that the community had to mete out street justice as related to this individual, because the politicians didn't go out and protect this child, with policy, because they were too caught up in virtue signaling to spite Donald Trump, to not think about we, the people, and the and the weakest people, which are our children. That's what really disgusts me about this whole situation as related to this human piece of garbage who basically destroyed the life of this child. This man was basically sick and depraved and so caught up in looking to break down someone because he felt like he didn't get to live his American dream. So what he wanted to do was participate in making a child's life a nightmare, and that to me is what makes him a reprehensible monster who will basically get not only a beat down on the streets, which would be the least of his worries. I'm wondering if they gave him a beat down in that precinct for what he did to that 13-year-old girl. But I know once they get him inside of Rikers Island, and I hope he don't get no bail from these stupid judges here in New York, I'm hoping that he don't get no bail and has to deal with Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles inside of Rikers Island. And if he's convicted, we'll possibly have to deal with them inside of the penitentiary. And as they give him, after they give him the beatdown of his life, they will then treat him the way he basically did that little girl, as they trade him for Little Debbie snack cakes, ramen noodles, packets of Crystal Light lemonade, packets of Crystal Light tea, Taster's Choice coffee, off-brand fruit punch, off-brand lemonade, off-brand lemon lime drink, off-brand grape drink, off-brand orange drink, off-brand apple juice, off-brand Oreo cookies, off-brand lemon cookies, off-brand duplex cookies, off-brand vanilla wafers, off-brand ginger snaps, Hunt's snack pack puddings, Kit Kat candy bars, Baby Ruth candy bars, Mr. Good bars, packets of soy sauce, packets of sriracha sauce, Snyder's pretzels, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle pies, bowls of Fruit Loops, bowls of Frosted Flakes, bowls of Corn Flakes, and Fritos chips, and Tasty Cake cupcakes, Tasty Cake coffee cakes, and all sorts of commissary. And as they go out and trade him for this commissary, filling up the front side and the back side, Mr. Sprinkles will come in after the spit roast, bend him over, and then spray both the front side and the back side with some special sauce. And then after spraying the front side and the back side with special sauce, he'll call all the members of Cell Block D over to split these guys' cheeks open and show his backside looking like the inside of an Entenmann's Louisiana crunch cake. And this dude, if he did commit this crime, will deserve that humiliation and will deserve all the humiliations he will suffer inside of the penitentiary, as they basically make him wash all the skid marks out of the jockey draws of Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles, and make him wash all them skid marks out with a toothbrush. This man will deserve all the humiliations he suffered in prison for the things that he did to destroy the life of this child. Again, this was a child that this man did this to, and he would deserve every minute of suffering in prison if he is convicted of these alleged crimes. And again, I'm trying to maintain some composure here, because what this man did was alleged to do was absolutely disgusting, to do this to a child. And again, this man is a monster, the kind of monster we were supposed to try to keep out of our country as related to immigration, because immigration was supposed to be about those who wanted a better life. But this man didn't want a better life, and he didn't want a better life because, again, in 4 years this man was in this country. He was in here from like 2021, I believe, when we had the border open as related to Biden's open border. And while he didn't come up with the buses that I believe with the Eric Adams was virtue signaling about, he still didn't do anything in this country but make more trouble. And instead of him looking to build a life as a man, he was looking to he made a young girl and a young boy's life a crisis with his just heinous action. And this is the type of male that, again, we are supposed to protect our families from, And again, this is a sad state of the government failing to protect its people, and that's what I see in this case as related to this migrant who was allowed to enter the country and allowed to enter the country unvetted and not vetted and looked out for. And because he wasn't looked out and vetted for, instead of him being a man, he made a crisis that made us all really, we should be looking at our politicians and really looking for politicians to get rid of sanctuary cities and dysfunctional policies that clearly don't protect we the people, but put we the people in danger by putting men in crisis in the sites of this country. Now, if you want to learn more about the whole dysfunctional paradigm of beta males and what leads to them being motivated to participate in this type of, just again, twisted and depraved behavior, and how to identify that behavior before they can do harm to someone, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis at other online booksellers like Draft the Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you'd like to see me make more videos about the man crisis and how it's destroying this country, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes' Godbreaker. The man who rules the world takes on the Asgardian god of thunder in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' Godbreaker in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.